这是给各位新人。这个位。没有。Okay, we'll slowly begin our opening prayers.
Jumbo, Jumbe, Jumbo, Jumbo, Yandamba, Jumbe, Sange, Riba, Shato, Dembo, Devash, Jide, Jimba, Jevo, Dube, Kado, Yugo, Lana, Meba, Hada, Menamji, Jumbo, Sange, Jumbe, Pejawa, Shaja, Tuba, Chaza, Jevo, 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 Jumbo, Jumbe, Rajomba Yanda Zobe Saye Vivada Shazu Demona Devorish Jine Jemba Jevu Duve Palo Yuga Lana Meba Lana Menanye Domba Saye Chumde Pejewa Shaya Tubala Jaze Lo Chedo Jazo Jevo Domba Jombe De Jin Jemba Rajomba Yanda Zobe Saye Vivada Shazu Demba Devora Jemba Jine Jemba Jevu Kalo Yuga Lana Meba Lana Menanye Domba Saye Chumde Pejewa Shaya Tubala Jaze Lo Chedo Dojevo Kande Kanye Zoje Dante Kajen Deta Gomba Dumbo Ane Jide Dena Choje Zo Deze Keba Kyola Jaza Nanda Puwa Chodo Zuzanwa Ishi Jazu Seji Rumbo Chaba Jide Zuna Namewa Gombo Chuni Kyola Jaza Jajo Demba Time Dave Jaza Tawa Kyola Jaza Dute Kyola Siba Suna Nyame Chuni Kyola Jaza Gombo Tuje Jendempa Tamje Gembe Tomba Nama Yunde Gyazo Je Deji Kyola Jaza Tabe Raja Dewa Gewe Nyeson Lero Chidu Dana Chugyo Chiju Jula Jalo Trone Trove Layan Lava Dala Rato Chingi Damba Yende Gindu Layan Jalo Yamba Jiyam Mejaji Yewa Puzum Soba Rangi Sene Yonsu Dene Sange Damba Kamara Mamela Yuma Seba Shu Melan Lola Tinda Bu Liji Shuna Lidada Sona Di Tamje Sibrayi Boba Dune Yingi Ratu Karamada Chive Latule Sibe Sobe Ratu So
To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened, the endowed transcendent, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise in, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are none. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the flow of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart Sutra, page 4.
Gelonje gindu jimbo don janju zimbe gindu jimbo tawa jindo jude ti te chumne zamu namo shija chuje nanda ge tinge zeno nyongpara shusu yang ti te janju sembo sembo paba chireze wanju shiraje paru du jimbo samu jimbo nila namba tashi kumbo ngabo tena Rashinje tongwa namba talo, tene sanjeji tu tsetan tenpa shari, tanju semba semba jembo, wajiri se wanju la tege jeme riji, kala la shirabji paradu jemba, samo jeba jeba deba jemba, cha tege jeme bada janju semba semba jembo, baba jiri se wanju ji tsetan tenpa shari tate, tege jeme so shari bu riji riji bumo kala la shiraji parudu chimba samo cheba cheba debu deda namba dawa jade kumbo ngabo deda tashinji tongba namba dawa jesu tau zu tongba ni zu le tongba ni shema tongba ni le jansu shema yenu deshindu sorwa du sheta namba sheba na tongba shari bu deda shetanji tongba ni de tsini meba Majeva, Mangaba, Timada, Dewa, Meba, Kangwa, Meba, O, Jaribu, Delavana, Tomba, Nila, Sume, Soame, Dijina, Namba, Sheba, Mime, Nawame, Name, Cheme, Lume, Yime, Sume, Jame, Time, Rome, Cheme, Do, Migi, Kame, Bane, Yiji, Kame, Yiji, Nambra, Kanje, Bado, Yamedo, Maripa, Seba, Gaji sebe padu yang medo deshin lu tunga kunjung wada gobada lame isheme toba me mato bayang medo sheri bu dedawa na janju semba na toba mebe chir chiraji padu du jemba tenji nede semba jeba meji chaba mede chiji lo le shingu de yangen debe tar chindu tuzundu namba shube sanje tamji kyang shiraji padu du jemba Lana meba yanda ba zobe chanju tu mombra zoba san yeso te dawa na shirabji paruto chimbe nga teba chimbe nga lana mebe nga minyamba la nyambe nga tunga damje rabdu shiva chimbe nga Mizubena Dembar Sheba Jade Sherabji Parudu Jimbena Meba Teyata Gade Gade Para Gade Para Sangade Buddhiso Sharibu Janju Samba Samba Jimbu Deda Sherabji Parudu Jimba Samola Labarja Tene Jumden de Dingen Tele Shene Janju Samba Samba Jimbu Papa Chirese Onjula Leso Shichawa Chene Leso Viki Tete Shino, Tete Shinde, Chitarajuye, Temba Shino, Shiraji, Parudu, Chimbo, Samola, Chimbo, Chadi, Shi, Sheba, Namjang, Jesu, Chumden, Dige, Jeka, Zeta, Temba, Shari, Tati, Buddha, Chanju, Sambo, Sambo, Chimbo, Pava, Chiri, Wanju, Tamje, Tembe, Koro, Tata, Mida, Mama, Yeda, Tiza, Chebe, Chite, Yera, Chumden, Deje, Somba, Nomba,
Page 11. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir on Vulture Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom Gambhira.
How should those of good family learn which to follow without practices wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the venerable Shantideva, saying, O Shantideva, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow without practices of wisdom gone beyond, should live by this analyzing the five hierarchies, nature, form, and emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, the recognition of harmonization of consciousness are all empty. Therefore, not all phenomena without their characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They neither decrease or increase. Therefore, the emptiness, there is no form, no beginning. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spirits with eyes up to no spirits with mind. There are none of these all the way up to the spirits of mental consciousness. There is no universe, nor is there structure of existence. There are none of these all the way up to the neural nor is there destruction of old age tonight. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no fear. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no knowledge. Therefore, because
there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond, and because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times are relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened, unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, where there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, a Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagata will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering in the world, which is gods, men, anti-gods, and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
Inja sumba de diwa jing me che si gyawa pusum soba rang di semi yong su tenne sanji tenpa yin da pa che da da to sanji ki tenpa che che ma che sanji ngang su sanji ki tenpa yore yo ma re se ge da sanji ki tenpa che da da kar che na diwa ani chi diwa ki cho ta ta kan diwa chi ki me pa ka ma che wa ta che gyawa ka zu be chung ju chen bo chi ni ka zu na ya sa pusum soba che 아니 될 때는 랑이 셈디 랑이 다고게 셈디 간주 뭐지 봐 마땅한테 수수 셈디 수수 당연히 다고게 아니 개와사수는 가와공 디바사수는 여바치들이 전에 되게 송화들은 산지기 때문에 스타 산지기 때문에 수수줄을 주는 어디 셈디 줄이 깨기도 나는 수수 산지기 때문에 이 줄이 깨기 열에 송화지
Today is our lesson on the way of the Bodhisattva. And just as it says in homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. In short, whether we can say rightly that the Buddha Dharma is present or not depends upon whether or not non-virtues are brought into control, and whether or not virtuous activities, whether it's one action or two, however many they are seen through to completion and of consummate excellent quality. And insofar as the mind is protected, preserved, controlled through discipline, and insofar as following a negative deed, one knows to feel a sense of remorse, and following a virtuous deed, one knows to rejoice in that virtue. To that extent, the Buddha's teachings can be said to be present. And when this mentality arises in one's mind, then the teachings of the Buddha are present.
개월 주보다 디고 뽕외기 아니 지금 수수 서바다 수수 셈데 수수 제바치네 열게 당한데 매버 있나 또 수수 상계 때문에 요 말했어 지난 담불 상계 때문에 요네 수수 규로 상계 때문에 요 말했어 수수 규로 상계 때문에 요 봐서 돼 랑이 디베초도 파 내가 써야 돼 개외초도 축사 딘데기 셈데 마이만 봐요 시신이야 오지 셈니 아니 니마 찍지 니지 숨지 들이 지기도나 아니 랑게 셈니 니마 찍게 알게 니 알게 당도 아니 수수 상계 때문에 알게 되고요 그래서 만 대단 질 상계 때문에 수수로 상계 때문에 유마요 개발 체험 말 수수 상계 때문에 수수기로 또 받게 걸어 딘데지 거래 송거지.
So then in the world, whether we can say that the Buddha Dharma is present or not depends in every instance upon whether or not an individual has the support of their own dedication to abandoning non-virtuous action and reinforcing their virtuous inclination. And so without any support of this mentality for our actions, there's no measure of the presence or non-presence of the Buddha Dharma. It depends entirely upon the presence of the presence in each one of our minds. And so bringing an end to non-virtuous activities, inclining ourselves towards virtue, and always, as we do this, being mindful and practicing vigilance, and thereby, day by day, increasing our virtue. With this, we can speak of the presence of the Buddha Dharma, but we can't speak in general terms of the presence or absence of the Buddha Dharma without focusing specifically upon our own minds.
얘네 주주나라 셰 디당 랑기 셈니부디 따다 되기도 면도 라투고도 면도 에 수수 셈디다 주주나 셰야지 되기 가르치기 매매는 곧 만디교 초디 파세 디그 초디 안 다운드랑 어디를 지내는 연구를 해서
And so now is the time that we teach and listen to the way of the Bodhisattva. And as we do so, it isn't correct to imagine qualities of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas apart from ourselves. Instead, the practice is to listen and instruct and imagine the encounter between the subject matter and our own minds, and the degree to which, with the resolution of the encounter of the text and our own minds, whether we can see that which is fitting and not fitting, and adopt practices that are appropriate and reject those that are inappropriate. This is the activity to be done.
제단다 최지단 신예인에다 인예인바이나다 즉 신예인에 아니 즉 거기 미귤 팽도 즉 팽배 돈을 삼는 돈을 셰 직직대 양직 거기 세제 남당 돈 베스 대시에가 셰 주주의 셰 직여스 인예인바이나야 아니 수수그 즉 세제가 윤대도 삼는 년 요래 양 디만에 버지 최랑 삼는 랑이 유 sem나야 즉 유상으로 둬야다. sem바 상으로 둬야다. 배 가다 장중 셈 정해야 되는데 수수그 냠내는 삼았다는 아니 예 그들 개발 첨부 여러 송어지.
And now, as we instruct in the way of the Bodhisattva and listen to the way of the Bodhisattva, in the case of instructing in the way of the Bodhisattva, one may do that with two primary attitudes. One may do that with the intention to develop and benefit one's own mind, as well as to present the diversity of information on the subject. So these two. And then while listening, one may listen intending to learn information and also to improve one's mind, develop kindness, train in the conduct of the Bodhisattvas, and imagine it as practice.
야, 다 간다 도도로도 약속되다. 그래서 수수기 니마직 수수기 미직이 냐면 아니 디지도 니마직 수수기 주도니 잡히는 게 수수기 고승기 줘봐 대당 아니 준주고 나라 세조게 아니 람기 랍제되니 아니 지금 라투고도나 아니 다 준주 녀바데 약고 차대요. 그래서 데 라투고 면은 준주 녀야데 녀난 데서 만들고도 차대요. 그래서
But the best attitude, the best and practical approach is to, in every given day, as the practice that we do in our life, on any given day, in the 24 hours of the day, to know the three doors of our actions, body, speech, and mind, and to see whether or not the subject matter of the way of the Bodhisattva has met with a comprehension in our own mind such that there is a compelling comprehension occurring in us.
야, 다 근데 이거서마다 간단하게 세장어 숙다치 전주 첨부 세계요. 전주 첨부 세리 다 전주 셈이 표현다. 전주 셈 원송하다. 아니 전주 셈 공배 강사도 유대 가리면 도 세계요. 그래서 비행 세벌다 냠을 제발라 신인지고는 이나양 부는 상보 전주 셈이 되게 귤 사지 보관토에 귤을 둬야 돼. 니지 이나양 냠바디 아니 지금 랑이 주상으로 들어가다. 신선전라 팬바다 타마 산지기 보관토에 귤을 둬 지도 얘기 있어서 그런 데리지 보는 예고를 해서
Then, as the subject matter of the way of the Bodhisattva, the qualities of bodhicitta, the benefits of bodhicitta, the praiseworthiness of individuals exemplifying bodhicitta, whether instructing in the way of the Bodhisattva, in which case one's intention is of utmost importance, and one's intention ought to be to benefit sentient beings, every one of them, to see to it that they arrive at the state of Buddhahood. And when listening, to turn one's attention to one's own mind so that one's own mind becomes more benevolent, more kind, and ultimately becomes inclined to pursue the well-being of others, such that one day all sentient beings are established in the ground of Buddhahood. This is the proper attitude to have. Last week, our focus was on bodhicitta and intention. That is bodhicitta and intention, and the benefits of bodhicitta we described with reference to scriptural support and reason. Now we're wrapping up this section, and we've arrived at the verse that is the conclusion to this section. The final verse describing the benefits of bodhicitta in intention is found on page 34, verse 25. This aim to bring the benefit of beings, a benefit that others wish not even for themselves, this noble, jewel-like state of mind arises truly wondrous, never seen before. This aim to bring the benefit of beings arises truly wondrous, never seen before. This aim to bring the benefit of beings hasn't arisen ever before, not even for a fleeting moment. And the aim to bring the benefit of beings is the aim to personally establish all sentient beings in Buddhahood, to achieve one's own Buddhahood in the endeavor to establish all sentient beings in their well-being. This is the purpose and the aim that, apart from bodhisattvas, doesn't occur to other sentient beings, never before and never even for a fleeting moment.
Oh yeah, that's 심지에 자주 삼반남지 아니 자주 심 귤레게 자주 자주 삼반들에 아니 가르치는 심지에 타다 심지 찌게 말로봐 타다게 아니 둥에 뽕 쳐봐다 심지에래 내전에 둥에 뽕 쳐봐다 아니 대화 두베 대화 타두바 사지지 고만 töbe 셈기 아니 베다 뒤다 가두이나야 아니 데데기 또간제 심지에 둥에세 왔다 대화 두베 탑장장 아니 셈네 데데 셈 곰네 대요래서
This noble jewel-like state of mind is the state of mind known to the Buddhas, rather the Bodhisattvas, once they have developed bodhicitta. And following the development of bodhicitta, they, at all times, for the well-being of all sentient beings, excluding none, endeavor to eliminate the suffering of these beings and endeavor to establish these beings in lasting contentment. And the ultimate lasting contentment is the state of Buddhahood. And the Bodhisattvas at all times, through their very best method, endeavor to eliminate the discontents of vulnerable sentient beings and establish the well-being of sentient beings.
Oh yeah, that's some jersey cheaper teas. Oh, they are very simple, but much in the travel. The cheaper sim, cheaper to puppy, and you sim D. And no member, water meadow, so much Tumba Dilla. Tumba, the is that, and you simple to do Tumba Dilla. And Cardilla and Shendaji and what's our song, that's huge, residual on the subject. To me, several Chevat, Java Chevik is that same, did it and huge, it's Archimore. 배시우 개침보를 땅도 되시지만 뭐 유대 죽으러와 뭐 다른 나기로 또 떼바지기로 오 떼바지기로 디나시체다 뭐 간단히 용수 송아 지기로 했 디나시 아니 나란도 이바이나 양 랑기 귤라 깨베 그놈게 랑기 귤라 바다 깨베 깨버 삼로다 뭐놈게 가고 아니 신기 귤라 깨베 그놈게 오 디디치고로 해서
This noble jewel-like state of mind arises truly wondrous. The mind of bodhicitta, in its preciousness, exceeds and surpasses all that is precious. It is jewel-like in this way and incredible. It arises truly wondrous, and it arises on the continuum of the bodhisattva. And when it does, this is marvelous. This is incredible. It is marvelous. It is incredible because it is the intention to dispel the suffering of vulnerable sentient beings and establish vulnerable sentient beings in their well-being. And this is incredibly momentous. And this verse is in praise of that, an encomium of that. And so we, for our own parts, rejoice in and aspire to the development in ourselves of bodhicitta, and in others, pray that it develops and rejoice where it has.
Oh yeah, that under Rangi that Sanju assembly that parents the Tambo Tubache, in it to be turned around sticks. Chembagi Simbachin and Yamayandu Samba, some Jungi Sherabi, Yanda Yandu Sambachin, Malava, Tembe Malava Simbache, and Tamarangi Gula, you want to get Sanju symbol. Chick Koatan, turn some Samba, some Kanga chick, Sanju Sim Tola, Quadro, never to the Chituna, and Shiragi Penchimbo. And this is the Rangi, that under chick lative Daya in by Inata Chiman, and it the origin to Kia, and they do away by Inaya, that Green and Chop, you are Indu, and Dilla Beva Chambucho Resonance.
Then these benefits of bodhicitta are presented here, and we listen to them and consider them. We listen and then we must recollect the benefits as they've been described and contemplate them, so that through contemplation, the wisdom arising from contemplation arises, and then we must consolidate that and not forget it, so that the meaning of the words lead to a true comprehension of the significance of bodhicitta, such that the benefits that follow from bodhicitta, that is the removal of karma and the obscurations, occurs, and that lasting happiness is experienced.
장주sem은 니유배 나네 넘버 장주sem다 주고 장주sem 니유배는 다 주고 장주sem이 다 표현시해 되라 다들 숨 뭐다 디 대바 디 도바세와 사비 숨이 어려서지.
Now with that, bodhicitta in intention is concluded. Now, of the two forms of bodhicitta, bodhicitta in intention and bodhicitta in action, we now turn our attention to the second, engaged bodhicitta, bodhicitta, active bodhicitta.
Oh, yeah, that is Zawadi, Dirva. So, when you carry to Simji doing Sigurba, the Simji Sonam Kang, Telan Chidar Shijilang for the Zawadi.
The benefits of active bodhicitta have three parts here. They are these three parts of the validity of the benefits brought by active bodhicitta. The three parts are the actual benefit, the validity of that in resolving doubts regarding that. In the first verse, this pain dispelling draft, this cause of joy for those who wander through the world, this precious attitude, this jewel of mind, how shall we calculate its merit?
Oh, yeah, that is that person de la, no change similar. Any pain seem to chill on the pond to ship on the sheet, the Yoba Yinas. And that Telecang, any job on your neck, Chavel was symbol. Chavel was symbol is simply dilla, and the Telecan Chavel to part the race. Telecan pain show your race.
If the benefits ensuing from bodhicitta in intention are extraordinary, those flowing from bodhicitta in action, the activities conjoined with bodhicitta will surpass that.
Oh, yeah, that Karichini pain show you Juzedo Kariores, no? And the dog when you want to the dog when you carry juice at the to Shilegota. The walk when you say, want to dance, that dinner that is out of the walk when you is, want to dance. Tarbe de all of Gober Cheba, Gavi Jutans, Senje Tata, the Dunga, Ki Ne, Net and the Jubber to be made to you, but you will cherish. Oh, teachers that they continue this was to say. Then I'm not seeing much to see Java. Oh, that walk when you should was some jay. And the same jet tire, but you are your one to walk with yes, that and said dealer, to that said dealer. And you rang it, Jixem. There were the Luigi, but Luigi or the same dewa. The dig never be to me. And it's Chima, the Nipa, said Chima, the Chima in the Mondo. Pardon me, for one toba. That in a tart bus, Tarchimba, not Tarbe for one toba, Sanji, you for one toba in Jig, the way you ganga. And it's you some at the younger race over. Said the Chimegi, they have on that and you something you would say the wrong.
Della Jidar Selgi Lang, the six in Shaloka Diro,
Tango did he
draw Kungi Kawaki. So this pain dispelling draft, this cause of joy for those who wander through the world, this precious attitude, this jewel of mind. First, the second line here, verse 26, this cause of joy for those who wander through the world. It is the cause of joy for those who wander through the world. Those who wander through the world are all sentient beings, and we may understand all sentient beings as they wander through the world, and the cause of their joy being the causes of joy in the present life for these beings, that is satisfaction and well-being of body and mind in the temporary sense in this present life for sentient beings, as well as the joy that is joy in future lives, the joy of being reborn in good fortune as a god, a deva, or a human being. Or ultimately, the complete thoroughgoing joy of Buddhahood. In any case, the cause of joy in these three senses is, in every case, bodhicitta.
뭐지 딱한다 봐 그때 뭐지 간데 완전 동행 수수가 내 단지 조벌 체계 매 내들 매기 찌지 매들 매기 매야 휴지베나 보면은 초도 주버 매기 때 주버 쓰기도 어디 나시제 만나도 동행 타다 조벌 체계 딱 매기 찌서 가서 가서 이게 추주거도 시제도 좀 양대라 뉴지스 제이바 뉴지스에 가서 가서 네버 체계 다 치워 좀 해야 뉴지스기래 아니 내 좀베기 뉴지스기래 아니 배가 셀룬줄 세바메 뉴지스기와 어디나시 땅 안아서 매기 빼는 안아서라다 직녀바 치쇼 안아서 미지나 섬을 땅에나 나와 요래 치워 요래 치워도 배신도 치워를 신나지가 봐서 치워도 봐 좀만 얘기 아니 다 뒤지 가는 데들 아니 뒤지 살고 그냥시 간다디 내 답지 좀을 제바들 맹지 아니 지금 동네 다다 좀을 제바들 아니 뒤지 어딘데 저기 어딘데 저기 줘봐 인자는 걸로 뒤지 줘봐 세워래 다디 가서 아니 말아도 답변은 말아도 수술라 다단도 된 배전한 배잖아 이신 누구 자도아 다 이신 누구지 여봐이나 아니 가리어래서나 이신 누구 여봐이나 먼저 우봉 동네 세계로 와 우봉 배나데 세고 담mel어서배 아니 폼받다 아니 담기 폼받아 저가 그 세로다 이신 누구지 여봐이나 랑이 동네 가리나 세 걸만한 게나 동네 세계로 와 된나시 텔레 봐봐 자주 그 셈들라 아니 랑이 만한 게 랑이 퇴바지 삼바지 공바지 되게 제바이나 아니 다 세디기 랑이 동네 시와 제나 팽그래 수수그 세디는 대화부터 오고 연나야 텔라되는 연결 아니 세치마 편제네 아니 지금 대도네 대도 저는 대단지 산제 고반토가 윤대 차상 아니 장주그 셈될 때는 연구 요인들 아니 매지 들고가 스포 민다기 해서 그렇지 그래서 너무 참아서
Now, to put this in an understandable way, that which overcomes sickness, that which we use to bring an end to our illness, is medicine. And the very best of medicines is an elixir of life, is an elixir. And as I explained earlier, nirvana is likened to amrita, or a nectar. There is nectar that is the vanquishing of death, that is the elixir of non-production, of immortality. There is the nectar that is the elimination of illness, and there is the nectar that is the non-exhaustion of resources. Now, for us, the primary harm doer to us is illness and also death, which we are afraid of. And so that which overcomes death is a nectar for us. And that which eliminates illness is a medicine. That which overcomes our suffering is a nectar. And each one of us, we may liken bodhicitta to also a wish-fulfilling gem, which when one possesses a wish-fulfilling gem, what happens is all destitution, all hardship, want of food, want of clothing, all of that can be eliminated through one wish to the wish-fulfilling gem. And so it is with bodhicitta. When its benefits are heard and listened to, and then it is contemplated upon, and then one meditates upon it, bodhicitta in this life brings tremendous, marvelous benefit. It brings contentment in this life. But then in lifetime after lifetime, it brightens our prospects and brightens our future such that we experience increasing good fortune by the virtue of bodhicitta, such that ultimately that increasingly bright fortune culminates in Buddhahood.
뭐야, 딱 개와 신다 참주 생기 마스백이 개와 딱 거기 수수 매일 팬도 제 여바이나 딱 매일 진 동행을 껴여바다 가지 제바 유면은 혼자 동행을 대화도 개와 가지 제바는 개와도 저라 체여서 시중 어디 개와디 가지 체를 지금 마구 유를 못 가지 체를 개와디가 체여서 장주의 생지 심백이 개와들라 아니 디가지 요르슨 체단 진배 망료 디가지 요르 배 체료 디가지 요르 체 송투야 요 말했어.
Ordinary virtuous activity that has yet to be conjoined to bodhicitta, insofar as it benefits others, protects others, in its virtuousness, it has a measure. It may be measured. One may measure it by its force and intensity, its time. But virtues that are conjoined with bodhicitta have no measure. There's no amount, there's no strength that can be named for it. It is immeasurable.
오예 이 안에 콩도 간데 빼놨다 장주고 셈기 셈베 손놈 디 아니 계생 안 주고 미기 통하여 여봐다 암주고 보여 예배 수수 주위에나스 수수 주위에나 아니 맞주 통대 난가디 잠불링디 아니 뇌도 제발 있는 디나는凶그 말았어 딜레장 하고 열었어 그래서
And there's a script.
베이징 주에 또 상이 좀 내리기 장주선 뭐 베이징 베이징 장주선 뭐 베이징 생겨와 되게 상이 좀 내려 지워슈베 랜드나 열어서 빠진 게 장주선 뭐라 랭지
Now, the scriptural support for this is found in the sutra that was requested by Dhanashri. And this sutra says that if bodhicitta, or rather if the merit arising from an action conjoined with bodhicitta, if to measure that action, the merit of that virtuous activity, if it were made visible and tangible, say by making the space itself a vessel to contain that merit, the merit of that virtuous action conjoined with bodhicitta would not fit in a vessel that was space-like in its capaciousness.
아니 삼바 스타트 하게 퇴배 되는데 아니 삼중기 싫어요. 양내야 전바 제바. 텔라 때는 장주쌤부터 남발론 되고 어디서 간가. 아니 디즈 제배 개와 디즈 양 아니 단다 나와 나시 배인디 아니 간다다 직단도 동승되게 뇌도 총세도 또 담불는데 뇌도 우선뇌도 중앙이나야 마셔 배인들이 여러서.
And so it is then that the meaning of bodhicitta, when we attend to it and contemplate it, and the benefits of bodhicitta, when we listen to description of them, the meaning and the mind attending to the meaning, which gives rise to wisdom, which we then consolidate in a memory, and then recollect repeatedly, and then make aspirational prayers in order to promote and further develop in ourselves. These activities, as virtuous activities, if they were to be made visible and tangible metaphorically by likening the trichilocosm, or the threefold thousand-world system, if that threefold thousand-world system were likened to a vessel, the merit of this virtuous activity would not fit in that vessel.
Yeah, 제세 친구 시월라 제백이. 전당원서 시에 주주로 디냠도 러드스 배지요. 오, 러드고 나라 아니 산지기 도목고베 또 콩창을 송여래 송여시.
The present text, the Bodhicharya Avatara, composed by the illustrious Shantideva, has a partner text, the Shiksha Samuchaya, composed by the illustrious Acharya Shantideva. And in this Shiksha Samuchaya, there is a scriptural citation drawn from the Gyaya Vyuha Sutra.
Oh, yeah.
Gyanda Vyuha.
Oh, yeah. That's a young day, you send some paying shepherd. That's in a paying the teba. Paying the yoba, one that on the table, so somebody to get one as a temper says your table. Oh, the table the shag, that's all the charisma. I mean, Pember Semba Subji Jones, Pember Semba Subji, Sanji Chili, Chepanas, semjen malu tamje ji dedu to marchi meji go so di ta za di re so.
That scriptural citation is of the Gandhavya Vyuha Sutra. Now, so with this verse, we come to in the end of this first of three parts to the benefits of active bodhicitta, which is the actual benefit. Following that is the verse describing the validity, the truth, the veracity of these benefits. And we find this described in the next verse, verse 27. If the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas, what need is there to speak of actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings? That's the root verse having to do with the validity of the benefits following from bodhicitta.
Oh yeah, that members somebody young Sanjay Chili Kepanas that singing the that mixedo better that mixe shaggy or this. That condition on Doa Simjan Tamji Kebe Chidu and da Sanjay Komato Juji, somebody can do some Jelanchi Yorwa. Somebody dance and it's Simjan on the Simjan Pember Saba. Simjing turned out Simjing to that, Mamu Majana, Simjing Chiraba, Chitangado, Yado, Nigero, Simjing, the Pagi Joba Shepat, Chibali Joba, Nelly Joba, that and the Pemba Kadichi Yoba in Nayansa, Pemba Cheva tea, Pemba Cheva, some less, I did not Lane Mato, the Simon Java, some Segota. Oh, this, Simbi, this, and Kadiji Oresna. Ani kya sanje de sanje ta chanju semba de ta pe tongda ma bo de shu ani ko de choba phu nyungul shu de shu ba le jang ani simji ge thona samlo ta ma de ta simji ge thon du nonom je ba ti phyn chewa yore so de sung yore so.
If the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas. Now, let's look at these two verses. If the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas. The simple thought to be of help that is, say, to protect and establish sentient beings in their well-being, I will achieve Buddhahood. This is the mind. And this is the thought. Now, imagine the particular, and this is just the aspiration, just a thought. It's not the actual activity of just doing so. It's just the intention to do so. Now, if that and its benefits were compared to inviting 1,000 Buddhas and then venerating them and worshiping them, the mere thought is of greater significance.
지당하서 쳐봤으니죠. 쳐봤으니 베베게로 쳐봤어. 저는 자게도 저는 부자스가 부자. 디나시진 산스케트서는 분자스로 쳐봐 분자스 좀 분자기 깨비 두 깨도도 된다도 가리어서는 분자스는 예버 쳐. 가오주마 예버 쳐. 가데 고백 딱 고시위 기부좀 가오주마 저기도 예, 제가 분자에서 산지 공원 예벌 쳐봐서 공원 예벌 쳐서 군조 예벌 보다 군조 예벌 쳐나 아니 쳐봐자 그래서 제가 쳐봐 표어에 가르치는 군조 예벌 쳐외치도 아니 쳐봐 표고 여러 와서 제가 다 대지도 가지고 갔죠. 거기 알아서 직다 지속 도랑 찾는 직 산 기능도 저 대디슈 샤덴치 쳐봐 표 지도 아마도 쳐봐 표 되듯이 어디서 쳐봐 표에디 가래 군조 예벌 제외 치도라 아니 제가 표고 여러 와서
Now we have the worship of the Buddhas, worship in another word is puja, and in the Sanskrit this punza, and punza means literally to please or to satisfy another. To please another is to worship another. And so worship of the Buddhas is done in order to please the Buddhas, to satisfy the Buddhas. And in a normal sense, the usual sense, we will invite the Sangha, for instance, the Sangha members, and make offerings to them, and do a puja, and worship them. And this is, in its meaning, we will do practices to please them.
오이 다 처벌 치도 처벌 전에 랑도 손놈 터고 이어봐 다 처벌 제 고야기 균제디 다 랑도 손놈도 터고 이어라 손놈도 터고 손놈 뒤 터비하게 치도라 군조로 처벌 표고 왔으다 근데 나서 다 이제 근데 이나 아니 군조데 가르스나 산계게 산프랑도 산계 고야디 가르치는 산계요 아니 산계게 공부시야 삼로땅 가르 산계 고랑도 다 삼로땅 다도 공부시야서 다도데 가르스나 아니 심지기 변체야 심지기 변체야 치도라 아니 산지 고방코란 그 로브칼레 망고제 뼈와 망고제 산지 고방도 아니 심지기 쪄버 쳐야지 아니 코란이 내가 도시 산지기 다 먼저 밀러는 그나 미스콜 내가 가려는 거 지밀러 로바 지기로 거 찍찍 왜 뽐버를 내가 드나시 산지도 아니 심지기 동에는 세기 동에는 껴버 쳐봐대 아니 산지기 내가 더 레소로
Then what is the meaning of exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas? The simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas. This may be interpreted through imagining the intention, the ultimate intention of the Buddhas in their thought and in their activity. The Buddhas themselves have achieved Buddhahood in order to, in the first case, they did so in order to bring about the well-being of sentient beings. Thus, they have become Buddhas. So they strove for Buddhahood for the sake of vulnerable beings. They did so in order to protect vulnerable beings, and then they have become Buddhas. They are the sort of person who, if they were an ordinary person, we say this sort of person labors to assist others. Here, the Buddhas have seen the suffering of vulnerable beings and then endeavored to protect them, and thus became Buddhas.
아니 간제 심지기 견도라 아니 산제라니 산지지 고마 토베야다 아니 심지 담지 동행을 껴버 치기 삼바다 심지 담지 동행을 껴버 치도라 아니 랑게다 내 고숨 저 가르치여 봐 어다 되게 담지 아니 산제를 쳐버 단단한 가지데 산제도 데레션 쳐버 필요할래 아니 손놈 쳐와 또 쳐와 누버치야 여래 손
Now imagine what it is to please the Buddhas whose ultimate intent is of this sort, when their ultimate aim is to benefit vulnerable beings, when Buddhas committed themselves, each one to achieving Buddhahood in order to protect sentient beings, when each one of us too vows to achieve Buddhahood personally, to protect sentient beings, to become refuge for sentient beings, and to engage all activities of the three doors to this end, with this purpose in mind. When this is the mind that one has, it is surpassingly meritorious, and it surpasses the merit that comes from inviting Buddhas and worshiping them.
산제 저망고 산제배 장가망고 저 지금 동분 가서 된디슈는 처벌 표와 이나양 처벌을 줘도 만들고 아니 지라 깔래 가고 차대요. 그래서 제가 가지고 군조로 처벌해야 된서 아니 지금도 담배 저다 간다 직 진바 단계 있어요. 진바 단계 칠레 진바 단계 요이나 칠레 진바 단도 칠레 때 샤대오로 샤대도 좀 해서 이제 신바지는데 아니 스콜로 편바 들고 어디로 제바 있나 아니 산제 투녀바 체 데스칼레 가고 여러 왔세다 아니 쳐바 차 맞아 어디를 그냥 가서 도와서 말
Now, whether you invite a million Buddhas, many millions of Buddhas, hundreds of thousands of Buddhas, however many Buddhas are invited and then worshipped, whether or not the worship is, properly speaking, worship in the sense of pleasing to the Buddhas is hard to say. It's hard to say whether or not one's form of worship will count as pleasing to them. We have a saying that we may be inclined to give charitably to a dog that is hungry, but we must do so by harming another sentient being to give that dog something to eat. And if our worship of the Buddhas and our homage to the Buddhas resembles this flawed means of charity, then it's difficult to say that the worship of the Buddhas will be worship properly speaking.
직다 랑라 손은 톡그레 삼바도다 랑라 대화 중난 삼바도다 안에 랑 데데기 저 랑도 이지기 군의 랑체는 쳐바들이 쳐바고 쇼라이나 군조 얘기 말아왔어 군조 얘기 말디 얘기 말자자는 쳐바 차기 말아왔어 다 텔레 셈제는 가두르바 셈제는 베 세미나자 요발로 베 껴바 쳐바다 루지 나자 요발 가데 강에 가리는 주강을 수수 가도 껴바 지기이나 아니 텔레 군조 쳐바 벨럽 채워 누가 채워 오 근데 여바디 아니 다 단다 뒤주 불안하는 순기 어려서 그렇지.
If in our worship of the Buddhas we are chasing our own well-being or are hoping for merit accumulated personally to benefit us personally, or if in any way we are selfishly motivated by our own ends and are in this form worshiping the Buddhas, it isn't likely that that will be pleasing to the Buddhas. If it's not pleasing to the Buddhas, then it isn't a worship, properly speaking, to the Buddhas. And so, alternatively, if our intention is to eliminate all discomfort and discontent of body and mind experienced by vulnerable beings and to benefit them, if this is the intention, then that attitude will be extraordinarily powerful, of extraordinary intensity and benefit. And this is what Shantideva describes in this verse.
semje malu tamje ki dedun so meji ko sa semje jigya malu ba ani dewa sala dewa la ko ba dunge thada pon che ba dewa thada la ko ba chebe gi chanju gi sembi nyamne jingen zola kharecheni ani yime chigu mares yime chigu doas ni semje kanda kunjo chebar cheba da semje la page phamba samba tambi jam phen de yena ta chanju samba de ju an chanju sembi phen diga 랍쟁이 잡아줘라는 가르치는 것도 뭐 가오치고 말해 가오치고래서 매번 치고래 수수들 놀람 자고래서 한 랑이 빌려 깨버치고 드나시 랑도 로버 치고래서 어디에 이 수구여서다 데데데 송사데 가와송어서 너 땡이지기 개고 어디 쿵스타는 송여래서 그렇지.
And then we move into the final two lines of this shloka. What need is there to speak of actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings? If the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas, what need is there to speak of actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings? The weal and benefit of beings is to eliminate all their discontents and suffering, to establish every last sentient being in ultimate contentment, lasting and satisfying. And when an individual actually undertakes to do this, what need is there to speak of actual deeds? These are the actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings. It is appropriate to revere such individuals whose actions are source of such blessings. We aspire and rejoice in these actual deeds and understand that developing the intention and then training in active bodhicitta is necessary and deserving of the utmost regard, especially when the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of Buddhas. The actual deeds make reverence for the mind of bodhicitta warranted. And the scriptural source for this is found in the Samadhi Raja Sutra.
계산다 된대기 변 첨부 여봐 아니 랑이 셰베 보내 아니 내가 냐면 첨부 배바 첨부 보내 아니 라버레스 아니 어디지 나디 태바지 나 태바지라 삽제 순바디 아니 도바세와 세상 도바세바디 아니 자와 가려스나 바 동에 도도 세미장 동에니 너무 봐줘 대화 되자 띠모베 랑기 대화 다들 좀 어디 자와 뒤에서 맞지
The benefits of active bodhicitta are thus, and when they're understood, one must, with energetic application, strive in the training conforming to this. One must must endeavor to train at this. And then, so that is the conclusion of the second part of this three-part section. The next verse is for removing doubts regarding the fittingness, the appropriateness of benefits being described as following from active bodhicitta. So the fittingness then is concluded. Now removing doubts. The root verse is, for beings long to free themselves from misery, but misery itself they follow and pursue. They long for joy, but in their ignorance destroy it as they would their foe. This is the root verse.
뭐야 나 동에 뒤에서 도바세와 세디 동에 도도 세미 예장 동에니 너무 봐 줘서 맞다 아니 다 semje 간대지 뭐이나다 간대 semje 다랑 sembe semje 신다 수임바이나양 아니 동에 대화 되고 열었다 간대 돼야 되는 거 찍봐 semje 간가 찍봐 대화 되고 대화 돼야지 치들라 아니 답시 가고 유구지로 다 다른 이유가 그건 수수 지기요 이나양 대화 되고 열에 대화 되고 답시 지기요스 이나양 아니 가르치고 그러나 아니 네 대화 다 수수 대화 되어봤다 동에 믿어봐 동에 생기다 수강 동에 되고 열마다 동에 되고 매번 가가 지송 지바지 그냥 가가 지바래 되어서 세다 동에 되고 열마데 다 동에 믿어 나양 아니 랑 동에기 다 밖에 매번서야 탑 랑이 신기가 말았을 때난 탑이 신기 매번 이두 아니 동에기 유튜브에 되게 열어서 그렇지
Now to dispel doubts here, this verse describes beings longing to be free from suffering, from misery. Beings with their longing to be free from misery, we can all relate to. They are the same as we are, with the same wish. We're all identical in this way. We wish to experience contentment and satisfaction. And in order to gratify ourselves, we pursue all sorts of means that are meant to bring us contentment. So all sentient beings have this in common. All wish for satisfaction. All wish to avoid dissatisfaction and discontent. This is the same for all. Though this is true, though it is true that we wish to avoid suffering, because we are unaware of the methods for actually eliminating suffering, because we are unaware of the methods for doing that, what we inevitably do is continue to bring about causes for further suffering.
뭐야 다 간다로 동에 돌아왔던 대화 토발라 아니 배바 친구에는 상 답시 지기 열었어 딱 선지 미덕 수임바 이나 라는 수이나양 간다 디 답시든 지기 열었어 이내 동에 다 돌아왔던 대화 두발라 아니 수수가 아니다 거기 돌아야지 동에 대화 두배지 대화를 임바 이나양 될라 아니 랑 땅도르게 내라 마케 받체네 아니 랑도 있나로 마케바 쳐레스 제타 랑도 노로 따티 마케바 인자다 텔라야 라베게 편도라 아니 다 현지 편도 아니 현지 동에 뽕을 제바다 현라 대와 제바디 탑시디 아니 가르치는 지기요 말에 최고래스 가르치는 딱 최고래스 최고야 가래 딱 동에 돌아왔다 대와 두번 제발라 아니 탑디 가래스나 시행자 대화 제바다 동에 돌아가 탑시 제바디 네버도 좀 벌쳐고래 제고대스 두제 자마 가르치는잖아 셈제나마 아니 다 간다 된다 도도리 비치고래 제고대스 아니 다 간다 동에 대화디 두고래 동에 세부비 셔스 규제들 나와 세우차자 이름이 탈라도 이다니 되는데 집안에도 뭐
But the any shem any pemba any drobiadam any donga doriala susu any bezin chigre
좀 와.
zumba chigre di susu gi donga panyada any dewa drobia gyu
어떤 간데 동에 간다 수수 라면다 간데 집어다 간데 대화 두바다 동에 돌베기 유기 조직 차고 그랬어. 또 간데 답시 약속 차고 와. 제가 들라 가르치는 좀 맞추고 말해 좀 맞추고 그랬어. 좀 맞추고야 가르치는 아니 동에 돌고 그래 대화 두고 와서 이제들 해서
discontent, which is to be avoided, contentment, satisfaction, which we all wish to establish ourselves in so that we may experience it. We pursue both of these, all of us, whoever we are, we all pursue these ends, the end of avoiding suffering personally, of experiencing contentment if we can. What we are attempting to rid ourselves of is unwanted suffering. What we are attempting to experience is the contentment that we wish for. But because we are unaware of the practices that must be adopted and the practices which must be rejected in order to bring these ends about, because we are unfamiliar with the practices to adopt and the practices to reject, and because unaware of these practices, we cannot train in them effectively, what we end up doing is sabotaging ourselves, because the method, the supreme method, the very best method for assuring that we experience contentment and avoid discontents is to strive for the well-being of others so that they may experience contentment and avoid suffering. This is the very best, most assured way for each of us to personally experience contentment and avoid dissatisfaction. And when this is true, when each of us, when all of us have the same ends in mind, which is to avoid dissatisfaction, to experience contentment, when the method for guaranteeing that, for bringing that about, is to strive for the well-being and contentment of others, and to strive towards others not experiencing unwanted suffering, when this is the method for our own experience of contentment and our own avoidance of discontents, when this is the case, why is it that we don't engage in it? We must do just that. We must do just that.
딱 간다 바꿔 되오지 같은 야살. 딱 간다 말한도 가르쳐 동네 돌고고요. 돌자도 가래 동네 주변에 가래 대화. 이나야 말한도 딱 수수 지도 잠 냠낸 때 저와 지도 아니 동네 돌고고요 때 양만도 동네 돌야기 주디 동네 바 돌야기 주디 마두바체 동네 주도 되게 알았어. 대화 두고 열때 만족이 대화 두고 여말 대화기 규디파 야 두고 여말 대화기 규디 마두에서 대화 연구 말 동의 유튜브에서 동의 연구를 왔어 제가 딱 동의 돌고 열때 랑 동의 유튜브 열에 대화 두고 열때 야 대회 유튜브 여말 되게 많은 좋다 동의 일을 몸벌이 줄 생겼다 친구들이 해서
Now, just to make it easy, probably best just to make this very easy. which is what we wish to rid ourselves of is suffering. What we wish to have is contentment. When we actually attempt to make this happen for ourselves, we make the mistake of reinforcing the causes for suffering when what we intend to do is avoid suffering. And though what we intend is to one day experience contentment, but what we inadvertently do is assure ourselves of discontent by accumulating causes for discontent. And so in every case, we sabotage ourselves. When we have only accumulated causes for suffering, we will then suffer. And when we haven't accumulated causes for contentment, we won't experience contentment. And so this manner in which we sabotage ourselves is described here. They long for joy, but in their ignorance, destroy it as they would their foe.
오예 다들에 세상다 간다 말한서 대외기 동에 돌고고 열때 동행이 주줍스디 동행이 주 가르줍스는 동행이 주디 유모디가 레다 유모니어와 제가 레다 유모니디 말한서 다 내가 소고르디 수구요 말스 레 유모 깨주 유모디 온 레사 레디 온 동행 깨온 거라스 다 대화 두고 열때 대외기 주 유모디게 매가 소고고 열때 매가 소고요 말스 유모디게 매가 마서디 아니 대화 영상이 고랑 규고라 쌓여 말스는 대화 용토 말았어 어디 손었어.
So then, we wish to avoid suffering, we wish to experience contentment, but the causes for suffering we continually engage in. And the causes of suffering are mental afflictions and karma. Mental afflictions and negative karma must be removed. But when they aren't removed, then assured is future suffering. And when we wish for happiness, in order for there to be happiness, first mental afflictions and the karma that they induce must be eliminated, but they aren't eliminated, so there is no experience of contentment.
오야 다지네 데데 이르서 뭐 당한도 대화 되어버데 대화 때문에 랑게 자난 신신 봐 전부 열었어 자나지 전부 열었어 동행 되고 요 말할 때한 동행 배 동행이 주주네 아니 배 과로 탐해 봐서 꼬라게 됐네 거야 등에 손 동행도 연구할 건가 수수 동행이 주주 주대 열어서
We wish for contentment, but we destroy any prospect of contentment as we would an enemy. And we wish to avoid suffering, but we continually engage in nothing but causes for continued suffering in the lower realms and in samsara generally.
오예 세상다 대화 다들 좀 세랑이 대화들 다들 좀 세다 좀 해디 아니 가리 온게 정보를 다 간다를 라지 수준 너바지니 라지 해봐이나 아니 수준 갑에 짜놓고 가도 짜도나 짜마도네 아니 배 간다 꼭 주의 가르치는 간도 파줘도 수만에 받아서 파 개가 도배 지금 어디나시 말한도 가르치고 그래서는 대화디 아니 되게 열때 아니 고 간다 티무 미시베 몸배 왕기 아니 뉴모디게랑 그런 유럽게 디왕기 아니 간다 대화 가서 얘네 되게 좀 대화도 좀 계산해 왔어 아니 동행이 좀 줘야 매버들 용해디 아니 간다 용해기 뉴모디게디 안도 맞좀 봐지 네야 본건 펴지기 위해서 아니 뉴모 다다 대화도 다다 좀 소들이 숨을 해서
They long for joy, but in their ignorance destroy it as they would their foe. We wish for contentment, but we destroy the prospect of contentment as we would an enemy. An enemy harms us, and so we confront them, and we attempt to stop them from injuring us again. And so we wish for contentment, and what would be our means for confronting confronting suffering, it would be the elimination of ignorance. For it is ignorance when it enshrouds the mind, when it is preponderant, when it is powerful in our minds. It is that ignorance that we must remove and eliminate in order for there to be no ground for the mental afflictions to destroy any chance of contentment. However, instead of confronting ignorance and eliminating ignorance, ignorance remains, is allowed to remain, and so long as it is allowed to remain, the mental afflictions will be present, and so any ground, any prospect of contentment is impossible. And so in that way, then, though we long for joy, in ignorance, we destroy it as we would of our foe.
뭐에다 간다는 건 아주 셈디 아니 디두기 거기 롱제 디두기 대화도베데 동행 봉야기 탑라 아니 아주 셈디 배 로고 치질로도 휴대요레스 그래서 디오게 아니 다내 가리 제바 있나요 아니 동행 봉에 탑을 더 두고요 말에 순거래서
Now the methods for assuring contentment and preventing suffering, the practices to adopt and reject, we have backwards. We are misguided. We misunderstand them. And so whatever we do, rather than it being positive for prospects of contentment, rather it sabotages any prospect of contentment.
뭐에 근데 태바들 근데 자와 도와드리면 도와 강시 대회 풍바다 동해만데 대달라 대화고지 침바다 동해 탐지 쳐버지 때문에 세제버 대당 계속 갈라요 대대 시제 갈라요 소동 대다 갈라요 소디버도 다 저와데
We continue then. But those who fill with bliss all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighed down with misery, who drive away the darkness of their ignorance, what virtue could be matched with theirs? What friend could be compared to them? What merit is there similar to this?
오예 애기도 하지다 강시 대회 풍바당 강시 대회 풍바당스데 다스 디스워 다시 강도 셰베 균제 다 간다 대두게 탑라 몽베게 셈제 다데 바게 대와다 동에지 내다 뭐마 심바 대와두베다 동에 두베 주 뭐마 심바 어딘데 몽바 셈제 디조게 셈제 디졸라 아니 가리어스나다 대회 풍바르스 대회 풍바서 컨트롤다 먼저 대화되는 사직이 대화다 사맥이 대화한테 망고여다 아니 사직이 사맥이 대화도 컨트롤 용어야 거요 말이다 이내다 사직이 대회 이제 풍바르다 배나 내송을 쏘버들라 아니 대화기 용어야기 보고 거요 말이다 컨트롤이 거기 취기 다 되어봤다 대회 자주sem 다 돼야 아니 지 컨트롤 사직이 대화되는 용어야기 고급이 풍바스 내봐서 그러와 아니 동해는 망다도 되면 동해 순간이 나대요. 다 예손을 해서도 동해 순간 찌리 냄그러서 동해 망다 댐바스. 오 망다 댐바 대달라. 다 대다 디버 순서지도.
But those who fill with bliss all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighed down with misery. So for the reason given above, sentient beings experience misery. For beings long to be free from misery, rather, but those who fill with bliss, all beings destitute of joy. Destitute of joy describes the plight of sentient beings who are ignorant to the practices that must be adopted to ensure satisfaction, and the activities which must be abandoned because they ensure that one suffers. So those ignorant of the practices that are to be adopted and rejected are destitute of joy. There are various forms of joy. There is contaminated joy and non-contaminated joy. And of course, beings in samsara, when they are destitute of joy, they are necessarily destitute of non-contaminated or uncontaminated satisfaction, uncontaminated joy, but they are also deprived and destitute of contaminated forms of contentment and satisfaction. For imagine the plight of hell beings in the lower realms, hell beings in the hell realms, where a word of Dharma they will never hear. And any prospect of any momentary contentment too is unimaginable for them. Furthermore, destitution of joy, to be destitute of joy, with pain and suffering. This pain and suffering is the pain and suffering of three forms, which pervades all three realms. And this manner in which sentient beings are destitute of joy, and this manner in which they experience the pain of suffering is described here.
아니 대화 가르스는 내가부터 다두기 대화 꾸인지 침바당스 그냥 아주 배당 알아서 지행 나라이나 아니 또 대화이나 아니 세 침바당 아니 꼼 대화이나 진배 동침바당 아니 직 간다 사와다 책배 직내도 가리나 콜로 껴바이나 아니 고 대화 침바적으로 와서 다단다 대화 꾸인지 침바서 내가 저 틈에한테 가르스나 내가 아니 게 송기 동행을 껴네 아니 다르베 동행을 껴봐 제바이나 아니 대화고 이제 침바당 시지리소아 다 침바당 디제 다 니바되게 동행 탐지 죄지 징스 동행 탐지 죄지 세데 디된 거래 인지 그거와 인지기 선배 아니 선제 탐지기 다 배는 말아서 세 디기 원도 제바 있나야 아니 셈기 난다 동행 아니 루이지 미디와 동행 아니 세치망에 송다 가래 디들 깨버 제배 동해 단다 쩌버 제배 쩌버 제징수 쩌버 제그레세 다 된대기 대화다 대화다 동해 쩌버 제바 대다 수치고스나 아니 셔럽이 치고 오로데 셔럽이 디무기에 세와제스도 셔럽된 거다 된대기 대화 중화다 동해 중화 대다디 아니 중화도 수치고스나 디무 몽바 왕이 치고요스 몽바 되기 왕이 아니 콜라 니모 제주 니모 디고게 아니 콜라 대화 매버스 등에 깨버 지그러와 제가 되게 그가 매버스 티무 오고 저세다 다 셔럽 되기 아니 티무디 베 싸와 니모게 싸와 티무디냐 아니 바 세버 지그레스 오 덴데 세버 제얘기 아니 장주고 셈 딜라 대단 충분 아니 교화 신 가요 말스 베딜레 하버기 교화요 말 장주 셈을 하버기 아니 선제 탐제라 대화 이치뭐 제투야다 동해 탐제 쩌버 제투하다 아니 동해 탐제 이주 몽바 세와 제투와 탐제 아니 장주 셈되게 제투고를 될래 세수가 제투고 말해서 어디 때 말해서 오지
But those who fill with bliss and joy all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighted down with misery. This first couplet, these first two lines, but those who fill with bliss, all beings destitute of joy, describes lovingness, loving kindness on the part of the Bodhisattva. It's a loving kindness that wishes to satisfy wishes to satisfy sentient beings in their every wish. Their every wish, including wishes for temporary contentment and the ultimate wish for ultimate contentment and Buddhahood. In both cases, Bodhisattvas, in their lovingness, wish to ensure the joy and contentment of sentient beings. So if sentient beings are hungry, if they're thirsty, they will give food and water. If they're experiencing extreme heat or cold, they will protect them from the extreme heat and the extreme cold. They long who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighed down with misery. This describes the compassionate mind of the Bodhisattva. It is the mind of the Bodhisattva that wishes to protect sentient beings from that which frightens them, from anguish of body and mind, the anguish that will be their experience in future lives, to prevent and protect sentient beings from that anguish. The Bodhisattvas strive, and they strive to achieve these two things through love and compassion. They bring these ends about in their wisdom. It is wisdom which confronts the ignorance that prevents sentient beings from knowing contentment and ensures that sentient beings know only anguish. They know only anguish because when it is ignorance that is the greatest force in their minds, they have a preponderance of mental afflictions. The mental afflictions are very strong in them, and then they bring about continuously only causes for future suffering and nothing else. But the wisdom of the Bodhisattvas confronts the ignorance that causes incessant anguish for vulnerable beings. And this is the wisdom that is possessed by none other than Bodhisattvas. And for this reason, then, what virtue could be matched with theirs? What friend could be compared to them? What merit is there similar to this? In the intention and ability to dispel the ignorance that causes the anguish of vulnerable beings, there is no method and no individual surpassing the Bodhisattvas with their minds. So with that description of the clarification and the validity of benefits of active bodhicitta, we will conclude the class. And if there's anything that isn't clear, if you have any doubts, we will have our usual question and answer.
Just a thought that came to my mind. When we say that if we practice our rules with these Buddhas. So in that practice, I would assume that it has both the practice of doing the sadhana, doing the mantra recitation, doing the virtuous deeds, etc. And the second part is the training of having the intention, or even sometimes having the virtuous activities that aiming toward the sake of sentient beings. So for having the intentional and the engaging bodhicitta, it wonders that then that would surpass worshiping Buddhas. And definitely will please the Buddhas. So if we are to compare the two parts of the practice. One is doing the, what we need to do, the sadhana, the mantras, the virtuous actions and all that. And the other one is to have the bodhicitta, even just the intentional one. Which one would please our gurus and buddhas than the other one? Because one would take you to liberation, and the other one, when combined with bodhicitta, would take you to Buddhahood. And so, but just loving compassion or bodhicitta alone, that probably would not take us to enlightenment. Is that correct?
써보셨구나. 언제? 지금 가르치죠. 오야, 드네 상게 장매봐. 진진 쉬네. 쳬바체야라. 그러면 쳬바체야래. 아니 문심 키워 삼기. 소남 체와 인수디. 계시기 순수아. 다 이네 소소 안에 냠는 체드 대주 제난다 대주 체로 대주 제난다 아니 소소 안에 그래서 안에 탑디 냠는 제난다 개와 드럽난다 디니 모수 자오 모수 체데레로 janchuk ki simbe gewa dende drumna nda janchuk ki simbe ane dejo chenanda nyamnen chetan dida sange denzo nimboche ro nimboche ni gawoche 당치파 드라보 직송 드라보 차게래 냠는 체드 개와 드럽난다 가르치난다 전축기 심베 개와디 드럽나 아니 상이 된서 아니 툭 녀보 낭으로 어디 라서 다 제선디 상게 장매바 딘딘 쉬네 저바 체야 디다 니 소소기 냠는 체야디 냠는 체나 직송 라보 자기 말에 니가 아니 상기 된서 아니 툭 내보 가게래 된데라 제자한테 니가 아니 상기에게 고판 토비에게 탑람 니가 상기 고감 토비에게 람 탑람 레민도와 레도와 티와 된도와 살라마살도
저기 딱 한다 꼴들 다시는 공도 시야 돼야 딱 만들어 나도 거기 산지 안다 산지 녀버 제 처바 최고야 균생이 와 산지 녀버 컨디스 그래 근데 가르치는 산지 녀버 그래 나바이나 아니 맞아 딱 산지를 처바 산지를 전주선보도 표 처바 표현이나 맞아 처바 표고요 와 처바 표고요 산게 녀버 용 세계의 용마스가 되어와 이나양 본인이 여러다 선쟁이 자주그 셈베 심be고는 선쟁이 되는 제바 섬진을 껴봐 제바 또 제바 들려 니당 산지 쳐봐 산지를 쳐봐 표가 이거지 아니 섬진을 반대 법에 인지 공부다 장주 쌤 공부现在偏不了这个的都签约的是，我说你有吧？你然后说，三级的情况比较的呢，那你把个申请成到了，申请了要不签吧，申请就是长久生工吧，第二签吧呢长久生工吧的，你不签当朋友签约的是，我就等于不现在现场上，你搞的钱呢，到三级了，当时本来。 미더지 수수가 가고 이유나 아니 미리 가야 될 답신이 정도로 와서 답신이 여봐이나 아니 미리 가야 답신 약을 따라 누가 따라 남자마다 생제기 된 제바디 아니 산지기다 니쇼 야쇼 가서 산지 가쇼 치사 이 생제는 생제기 된 제바 자기로 했어 다들 니버디 산지 다 이처럼 나와서 다 제바 필요하다 누구 산지 니버지 그대로 그래 이나양 다들 생제기 자주 쓰는 거 생제기 되게 제발 나시 이제 얘기 말았어. 또 지금 뭐 어디지 나.
네, 사실 다디 콩 아니 초바체야. 디 초바 상기라 초바체야 요로. 초바체야 데라 고 가르는 아니 렌 초그레스나 소소기 드롭다 냠는 체야디. 냠는 소소 아니 대조 체야디. 디 아니 초바체야레. 디 초바체 인상 di ani simchingi danda drobia yamre
저저 자주 생기 생대에나 내가 참 수수 산지기 고방 더게 치들라 아니 나기 군대 제여래 아니 심지기 동에 세야도 나가 군대 제여로 또 거다 간다 수수기 꾸는게 안된다 되면은 또 자주 생기 심바 찾아라 이 그런 거 이나오다 거는 지고로 깨와 있는 지고로 지차 또 조금을 알고 그래서 끝나가서 타기 냠내 제도 기름고 도는 거도 간다 내 산이 고방 토에 선제기도 산지 고방 토이 대지도 타기 냠내 고는 지로 와. 이 제가 있나? 전주성 쓴거 차서. 아니 그 저 냠내 가르쳐 봐야지 전주성 쓴거 이 차서. 저 차서 어디 차고.
So in short, what I described was the reason that Buddhas are pleased, or what is pleasing to Buddhas, and when we worship Buddhas in an ordinary sense, it's not certain that our form of worship will be pleasing to them. It's possible that it won't be. So worship, generally understood, may be pleasing for Buddhas and it may not be. However, so this is one approach to pleasing Buddhas through worship, which may be pleasing to them and may not. But the other approach, which will certainly be pleasing to them, is to attend to the well-being of sentient beings, protect the vulnerable, have this as one's intention. And when this is one's intention, underlying one's activities, then that activity has been conjoined with bodhicitta and or compassion. And when it is more significant and guaranteed to please the Buddhas. Now, so that was in short. So why is that the case? It is that the Buddhas are satisfied or pleased by undertakings that consider the well-being of all. Now, if there were like for an ordinary person two ways to please them, one better, one worse, it is to say that the better, the more assured, the more guaranteed way to satisfy this person would be to have as one's purpose the well-being of others. When the not preferred means is to simply make offerings and worship without certainly being divested of your own personal investment in that activity. Now, once you've separated yourself, divested yourself from selfish interest and undertaken the well-being of sentient beings, then that's to do something with bodhicitta, or with compassion. And it is, as you say, it really comes down to what you have said. One may perform their sadhana, their deity yoga, conjoined with bodhicitta. And when this is done, then, and if this is worship of the Buddhas, this sadhana is worship of the Buddhas, and this deity practice is worship of the Buddhas, and it's conjoined with bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is present, and it's the deity yoga with its generation stage and its completion stage. When the intention is to ensure the well-being of sentient beings, and for that reason I undertake my deity practice, when that is the intention, and that's the actual intention, then the actual practice of the sadhana and the deity yoga is the very form of worship that pleases the Buddhas. Now, when a patron invites the Sangha and patronizes the Sangha, and following that instance of patronage, a dedication prayer is recited by the Sangha in appreciation. That customary verse of dedication originates from the time of the Buddha during the summer retreat when King Ajatasattu was patron to a feast, patron sponsoring a feast, and there were many in attendance there. The ostensible patronage was patronage of the Buddha, but many were in attendance, and King Ajatasattu was the patron. And so this occurred. Ajatasattu was the patron, and then following the event, the Buddha was aware that King Ajatasattu was his intention was selfish, contaminated by self-interest, and so the manner in which to make a dedication effective was to describe the merit of the patronage as being conducive to all who aspire to the well-being of all sentient beings. And so when it is, that's part of the dedication prayer, and then the other is that by virtue of the merit here accumulated, may those present be protected and considered by the Buddha in the future, such that they may ultimately come to be concerned for the well-being of sentient beings. So that meant that in attendance were others who weren't the actual patron of the Buddha, but they may, by this sort of dedication, they may experience the blessings of the patronage. But the king too, who was selfish, would be, by the virtue of the dedication prayer, ensured guidance and consideration such that one day he too would have the concern of all well-beings in mind. And so the dedication prayer has the design of the wisdom of the Buddha to ensure that blessings are conferred upon both sorts, with self-interest and then those especially with the well-being of others in mind. So this applies to that.
Thank you, Geshe-la. So in reference to the verse 28, which says, for beings long to be free, to free themselves from misery, but misery itself they follow and pursue. That one. Basically, they always end up in suffering. So how can we not fall into the misery and suffering instead of like when we're looking for joy, and especially like in relation to like other people and like our interpersonal relationships and such.
Yes. Lots of the and 60 dilla or no. Råkung go you since you don't have 100%. Don't do the sim you can don't need la non par the digi danda and la lentaria la candice chegre perna and pension and dropo so the pension the netan la tene 60 digi tunda la len kanjes tarugre.
잔다 가다 먼저가 가르다 수수기 대화 가는 연구도 동행 가는 연구도 네 모신 거다 네 세주 단에 들어왔어 동행 가는 연구도 동행 용사 가는 대화 용사 가는 그 세주 단 아니 다 되자 세단 팀은 오랑이 셈되기 코르도가 되자다 세단 팀은 아니 되게 셈 냠도 군주 냠도 두나 맞을로 간다 유무되게 왕이 유무되게 제례 가래 맞을로 동해 중앙에 들어다 동해 깨버 제대 군주 제례로 와다 셈되게 코르도라 아니 지금 뒤매와지 유무도 콘도 매와지 아니 잠바다 닝지다 아니 시럽도 좀 코르도 냠도 여나 아니 시럽도 닝지 잠바도 군주 내가 보는 제례디 대화때 군주 로바체 펜바체 셈 기부소야 아니 수수 미지네 기부소야 세치마이나 대화나 군주 제례로 와서다 수수의 셈이 다보게 셈이 가도도 따지신 셈이 니모 어느 누구도나 다 눈에 용이고 시해봐서 셈이 그게 보고 잠바다 싫어도 닝지도 어느 누구도나 아니 대화 용이고 다 시해봐야 돼 장애 양내 뒤치고 그랬어
What to do is examine actually where satisfaction comes from and where dissatisfaction comes from, and to look at it, take stock of that actually, take stock of where satisfaction comes from, where dissatisfaction comes from. And in fact, where there is desirous attachment, where there is aversion, wherever there is ignorance with it, because the function of these mental afflictions is they are classified as mental afflictions because they cause suffering. That is their function, and that is why they are called these. Now, where there is love and compassion and wisdom, their function, and they're called those, where they cause happiness in this life and in future lives. So then what needs to be done is one must protect the mind and watch where it wanders to, knowing that when it wanders into territory of the mental afflictions, it is in the territory of mental afflictions because it is in the territory of causing future suffering. And when there is love and compassion and wisdom, these are the causes for contentment. And so you just need to examine that and take stock of it.
그나도 부부직 야고 보이나 기계 야고 하마 야고 도보 야고 우도아스 어디 되게 배시되라나 다시 걸 하마 야고 말아서 도보 야고 기계 야고면은 부부도 야고 차 그거 빼유 로아스티나 신당 알아서 셈디 약보지 단단하도 눈에 되고요 말에 등의 유튜브에서 내가 되고요를 대외 유튜브요 말했다 수 저거로서는 시럽 식으로 와 시럽 되기 안에 가리 제바체네 시럽도 남지기 시럽이 제바체네 다 동해디 간에 중으로 동해디 유레드 니모로 중 대화디 간에 중으로 대화디 아니 밖에 잠바다 닝지다 뒤도는 연구를 일단 디시에 보네 아니 수주고 셈데 바이오기 배 잠바다 시신이야고 땡제는 아니 셈데 니모 끼기도는 니모도 바까기 거기 셈데 개와치 셈바 야고 셈바 상고 연구도나 거야 다보게는 손에 잠바다 템베 손 아니 시신이 라마 저거체 어드레시 셈데 다수 다보게 답시 약수 드레스
So in the same way that in order to ensure that a child grows into a healthy and mature adult, there must be parental guidance and the support of friends and conditions for their maturation. And similarly, the conditions for the development of the mind need to be comprehended and understood in their as positive contributors to mental well-being and negative, destructive contributors to mental unwell-being, and what the mind may do. Wisdom, native intelligence, is what allows one to discriminate between what contributes to development, healthy development, and what doesn't. And so the mind then carefully, with mindfulness, with the tools of mindfulness and vigilance, observes what the mind is participating in. And when the mind is participating in something destructive, such as the mental afflictions, then recognizing that the mind must slow itself, control itself, so as not to fall more into the influence of those negative influences that are destructive for the mind. And similarly, through mindfulness and vigilance, where supportive conditions for the mature, healthy development of the mind, that is loving, compassion, bodhicitta, and other supportive conditions for mental well-being, when those are met with, mindfulness and vigilance can identify them. Mindfulness identifies them, and vigilance ensures that the mind continues to work with those constructive, positive contributors to the well-being of the mind.
Sembat permasa tahu jauh sembat penang azul susu subula mijik tugu yuna tugu je susu penang toni pegado yorda susu mijik susu la magani mijik ram tusuna ram lamsan so dumaikiam pe ko ngala tusu samne pe susu magasa chijem sen susu tugu zama so dumaikiero ta susu gani mijik susu lawa changsuna a ngal ko susu so dewakiamdo ta susu 직 거기 뭐 개 저와 매저 제가 미주 바람만직 투수나 저 단임 지기도 왔어. 그거 선배는 선배 소화되는 집과 간다 동이 주부직 미 주부 마가니 주부직 가니 주부직 밤에 주부직 주부스 뭐 집어직 수수 공부하는 투수나 한 처음이라 숨지기도 왔어요. 이 소화도 깨도 가가 가르치는 연구였으나 수수 비교도 유무되게 온게 아니 그 유대로 막아서 될 남산 공백에 가서 될 되자게 아니 발마들 따님 찍기도 왔어요. 그 이모 그 되게로 어쩌다 그 쌤이 아주 쌤이 이모 깨다는데 남산한테 제비 좀 좋아하게 드릴게요. 그래서 비디오마다 수수기 쌤 수수기 다 보이잖아요. 아니 쌤 테스 계획처럼 누구도나 다 보이죠. 쌤 미계처럼 누구도나 남산한테 봐 제비 제비 어디 지도가 거라서 대체나 아니 이만 찍지 이제 아니 맞을 때 이야기 줘야지 열어서
The mentality, our mentality really must be carefully considered as the determiner of our experience, because when we are predisposed by already sorting a person into the group of a disliked person, and then we meet them, we are sure to experience displeasure and aversion. And then when we encounter the person who we are predisposed to appreciate and whose company we are predisposed to enjoy because they're someone we acknowledge as likable, then when we meet them and just touch them, we're gratified and it's pleasant for us. And then when there's someone without any predisposition, unfamiliar to us, we meet them, then we have a neutral feeling about them. And therefore our mentality when it comes to others determines what would be the source of, could well be the source of any of the three kinds of responses. The predisposed mentality determines the experience. And so what could be, well, any of the other experience, source of any other experience of satisfaction or indifference becomes the source of aversion. and so on. So it is, so we have to look at our mentality as it is, it starts the process of generating mental afflictions. And so then we must watch and be vigilant and protect the mind and recognize when it's in a virtuous mindset, and then recognize when it's in a non-virtuous mindset, and then adjust it. And then we adjust it, and by adjusting it day in, day out, again and again, eventually we improve that mentality of ours.
That 어디서이 어머 돈이 세계로 왔다 나올 돈이 배시를 잡았다 다들 사실 돈이 누구도 수부디 코마레 tuksaagi susu subu jiro, pumba jiro, pumba jiro, zuwe na pumba di nga ma re. Ko nga la tuksu sayagi tati tenpa tongi ki zon samatana subu bagwaji da shak bagwaji tuwa ma da nga ta ko tuyo ma da. Ta ine susu ki semgi soya na la ko nga la tuksu. Ini maga gaya kanga chigidwa. Ine mune china ko nga tuyo ma tuyo zubu de ko ma re, tuksaagi pumba di nga ma re. 와, 제가 계절이 제일 그렇다. 제가 돈이 빼시는 건 고울 어디도 싫다. 하나님 초화도 계시로 왔어.
Right. So later on in the presentation of emptiness, we have a fine example that dissolves the deluded conditions for preconditioned experience, such that when we're identifying that which is empty, and we do it by pointing, by indicating, pointing with a finger at that which is empty. And so you may say this appropriated aggregate of physical form is empty, and you indicate what it is. You use a finger to point at it, and the finger hits the ostensible form that it's pointing to. But there's no actual identifiable indication going on of what is empty. It's not that the finger points at what's empty. It's not even that the finger has a point that can encounter that which it's gesturing at, the form that's empty. That doesn't happen. And so similarly, when the mind is predisposed to have an encounter with another, and it's someone that we like, and then we encounter them, we physically encounter them, or we encounter them, and we think, I've met with this person, and now isn't this satisfying? The conditions for actually meeting, encountering, are not there. There are no such conditions. There's no such encounter. And so this too, we will look at in the presentation of emptiness, but here we're looking at, I'm talking particularly about feeling. Okay, so now our time's up, and should we close with our prayers?
선중이 싫어도 선도 땅에는 대집에 표현 어디 표현이 땅안도 가르치고 있으면 표현이 따고 잡으러서 라마도와 수 망으로 답시지고 다들 답시 제비 아니 가르치고 있으면 뭐하고 지고 라기 제비 개어디 다 매번 맞아 내가 제바디 아니 뭐하고 지고 했어 다 뭐하고 지고서 맞다 라기 개어치고 뭐하고 제바이나 아니 라기 뭐 제바이나 라기 개어치고 충으로 만들고 매번 맞아 빙그레스 아니 신지 개어치고는 뭐 제바이나 아니 라기 개어치고 망고야 팬 지기는 주주인의 자자는 동전의 팬으로 그랬어요 뭐디 라기 개어치고는 뭐 제수이란다 뭐 제요 신지 개어치고는 제수이란다 뭐 제요 제가 네 개어사야 탑 약쇼 내 학쇼 데리지 요래 데리지 제당도 개와 제거 데라 때네 아니 산지기 때문에 유른도 내봐 아니 말아도 집에 심지지 감지 내 무기 모두도 쉬워 아니 지 간다 지게 감나는 취 지바다 좀 마요하고 데려도 방금 얘기이나 아니 뭐 라나면 봤을 차네 아니 장이 지조 개와 간가 lama chunglu ma duwa, meba ma sawa pe chiru duwa, manglu duwa tabshi di ene ngowa ku chigo de, ngowa yabu chigo de, ngowa che chita ke chimbo de songo chi.
So now, listening as we have to the benefits of bodhicitta, and then when we listen to the benefits of bodhicitta and contemplate the benefits of bodhicitta, and this gives rise to the wisdom of contemplation of the benefits of bodhicitta, these practices are incredibly virtuous and constructive. And so that these virtuous and constructive practices, that this merit and this virtue not be lost, that it be preserved, that it be reinforced, that it be ensured to be of benefit in the future, we dedicate the merit. And when we dedicate the merit first by rejoicing in our own inclination and engagement in virtue, and then dedicate our merit. And then two, when we rejoice in the virtuous activities of others and dedicate the merit. In the first case, rejoicing in our own virtues and dedicating the merit, that merit will not be lost. But when we rejoice in the virtuous activities of others and dedicate their merit, that increases tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold our own roots of merit, so that they multiply by virtue of our rejoicing in the merits of others. And so then the practice of dedication of merit and virtue is very important. And so then we may turn our merit and virtue from attending to the benefits of bodhicitta to the lasting guidance provided by the teachers of the Buddha Dharma and the long lives and the lasting influence of the Buddha Dharma. And also that the pandemic and the threat and danger of floods and all natural disasters be prevented. And when this is done, when we dedicate our virtue and our merit to these ends and rejoice in the well-being of others, rather rejoice in the virtue engaged in by others, becomes very forceful in the preservation of our own roots of merit and multiplies our roots of merit. And so the practice of dedication and reciting dedication prayers is extraordinarily important. So we do that now.
Dene rendo bele zoni gi kadar yamba kashi saba Lome mare gi don lowa ye mande yave opo taji Dema zube zera gundo ya jabe yangi seve jesu Tembe remba goza lanje jo nyene drube yana nije Rangi jije dobe lanje ne shura tseve rave kage Rove yije mba seje ne Yave temba yure zinyu Temba reje choje majaba Jaya nyamba yure chode Nije chembe yirabu jeba ye Tende teche sewa jeba Seje gyave me jun tene Lego tanju namji rembe Tabu nange ila pede Gyave zeba rendu yonyo Tanzan rube tuje ruje Yege seje medamene Sera kodo gyave naba ye Namda java manju Kanze tebo jala chujuji, chujin jula sumabi. Tuden lanje tabu roji, kaji jazo chugun gyayuruji.
From my two collections, as this space that I have amassed, from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief living Buddha for all those whose minds, wisdom, eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life's wonders. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings. May I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be gained with kindness, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the path never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. When someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Pare lave kove shinkande pendante wa malu chungwe Chere sewa tenzi gyazo yi jabe side batu de yuru Jambe bao jidar kemba no kudu sambo de yandi Eda buji jesu dalo je gewa de da tanje ratu Uzo shebe gewa tanje je mowa kama choku nama Daye geve zawa digun gyam sambo jeje ratu moraji Chanchu senjo rembo je magye bana je gyurji Kewa nyamba meba ya kone kondu pewara sho.
I dedicate whatever virtues I've ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losam Jakpa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Shinrezi Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantavajra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue, with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious thus gone ones of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen rise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.